This Karen lawsuit story is one of the most ridiculous I've ever read in the history of this channel. You'll see what I mean. Check out this video in podcast form by searching Austin Stories wherever you listen, or check the video description for a link. So this just finished with my friends Adam and Belle, and I'm still laughing at the audacity of their neighbor. A couple of years ago, Adam and Belle settled in a neighborhood in their home state, an hour from their hometown. Part of what attracted them to this house was a beautiful white oak tree that grew in their front yard, estimated to be about 100 years old. The tree is a fixture in the neighborhood, and to their neighbor 3 houses down, it was something special. This neighbor, Karen, was about 10 or so years older than they are and is a die-hard environmentalist. There's nothing wrong with this, but this neighbor took hugging trees to a whole new level. Her first sentence to Adam and Belle a few days after they moved in was, "You're going to take good care of Stanley, right?" "Stanley?" Adam asked, confused. "The tree, that's its name." "Oh," Belle said, laughing nervously, "I wasn't aware it had a name." "Well, it does, and I hope you won't make sure nothing happens to it," Karen said, in a somewhat threatening tone. Belle and Adam are former Army and police respectively, so they weren't intimidated, but they realized this neighbor might be nuttier than a squirrel's pantry, according to Belle. Later, they were talking to a different neighbor about Karen, and the neighbor just rolled her eyes and said, "Karen's harmless, just squawks when someone accidentally drops their trash on the sidewalk or something like that." It became something of a joke between Adam and Belle to say hi to Stanley. Fast forward to last spring. While the other trees in the neighborhood sprouted leaves, Stanley remained barren. Adam and Belle hired a respected arborist to come in to see what was wrong and to hopefully fix the tree. Unfortunately, according to him, the tree was dead. So Stanley had to be cut down. Belle and Adam alerted their neighbors and assured everyone that they would plant a new white oak tree in its place. They also checked with the county and the city to make sure that they didn't have to file paperwork, got a report from the arborist, and hired a company to cut down the tree. Basically dot their I's and cross their T's. They learned from their many years of their careers to document. Stanley is cut down and the stump dug up to make room for the new white oak that was coming. That night, Adam and Belle are watching TV when Belle happens to look outside. There's a figure lying on the spot where the tree stood, but it's too dark to make out who it is. Adam gets a flashlight and his phone and heads out. Lying on the spot, sobbing profusely, is Karen. Adam, uncomfortable, asks if something is wrong. She tells him to go away. He's not in the mood for confrontation and just asks her to leave. She says, "I'll stay as long as I need to grieve." Worried he's dealing with crazy, Adam calls the non-emergency number, and at this, Karen just scurries off. Karen starts acting crazy. She wears all black for several days, has a large picture of the tree in her front window, and would glare at Adam and Belle as they worked in the yard. She doesn't do anything illegal, but Adam and Belle invest in a security system with several cameras just in case. Belle has something of a green thumb and decided to plant a vegetable garden. One summer day, she and Adam returned from running several errands only to find the vegetable garden gone. All that was left was the upturned dirt. Adam and Belle check the security footage, and to their utter shock, they see Karen uprooting their vegetables, potting them, and moving them to her house. They call the police and they head over to Karen's house. There was Karen, planting the stolen vegetables in her backyard. When confronted, she says, "They didn't take care of Stanley, so I'm taking care of them." You read that and heard that right, folks. She felt that she was entitled to them because of something that happened out of Adam and Belle's control. Adam and Belle give the officer, "You don't get paid enough for this," looks before the officer says, "Ma'am, you did steal from them. They just want their plants back. Otherwise, they will press charges." At this, Karen becomes irate, and it's not until she's reminded that the officer has a body camera and that assaulting him would be a dumb idea that she agrees to give back the plants. She glares at Adam and Belle as they take the plants back. They get a police report and add it to their paperwork. Not long afterwards, Belle and Adam get a court summons. Haha, yep, Karen had decided to sue them for emotional and property damages, all for cutting down the tree. Their lawyer laughed as he looked at the letter, saying there's no way this would fly before a judge, especially with all the evidence. He sent Karen's lawyer a letter saying as much, saying that if she did go ahead with this suit, that he'll go after them for court and lawyer fees for wasting everyone's time. No dice. Karen dug in her heels and a court date was set. The judge let Karen and her lawyer argue for close to an hour about what Adam and Belle had done to her, how Stanley was an innocent soul who deserved its chance to live, that they don't deserve the chance to even care for a child. All the time, the judge was looking like she didn't know whether to laugh or roll her eyes, but she let Karen dig her own grave. When Karen and her lawyer finish, the judge turns to Adam, Belle, and their lawyer, asking if they had a counter-argument. They present the paperwork from the arborist, the city and county, and the video of her stealing their vegetable plants, the police report, everything. The judge looks over everything before looking at Karen and her lawyer. I'll keep this brief. I've been a judge for close to 30 years and have seen many cases brought to the bench. And this has to be the most ridiculous case I've ever heard in my career. She ruled in Belle and Adam's favor, and Karen had to pay court and lawyer fees after chewing Karen out for wasting everyone's time. Karen put her house up for sale and hasn't been seen much in the neighborhood. Next spring, after the soil has had a chance to heal from the nutrients that Stanley sapped up, Adam and Belle plan to plant the new white oak tree. They're thinking of naming it Karen. Hey look, I understand being attached to something. When I was a kid, I didn't want to sell this nice super sports car that we had, but look, I was a child. This is a grown woman. How do you explain this? You can't. It's a Karen. You just, you just deal with her, I guess. How would have you done this? I'm at a loss for words here. It's a freaking tree. Come on, man. If you want to get cool badges and see some videos early while supporting me and the channel, click the join button to become a member. Thanks. Karen Boss story time with the twist of an ending. Try to be lazy and get me to do your job, I'll let you fail. This happened 2 decades ago. My first job was at a fast food chain. I worked hard, impressed the store manager, and got myself promoted. At the time, I was still 17, so I was promoted to team leader with the implication that I would get promoted further when I was older. I was still in high school, so I worked the evening shift, which started at 4 and ended at 12. The evening manager was a good guy who also worked hard and, as a result, had gotten promoted to a store manager position at a different location. Since they needed a manager and I wasn't old enough, they hired a new manager who I'll call Karen. So, Karen is hired and starts shadowing the current night manager, learning the ropes. After 2 weeks, he departs and she is now set to take over. That's where the story really starts. So I normally get in around 30 minutes early. One of my responsibilities is to make a position chart which tells the workers where they're working that night. I need to hand it off to the manager for approval before posting it. As I arrive, I notice that one of our night shift workers is already there. We'll call her Jen. She is sitting in the lobby crying and being consoled by other employees. I always found her to be a bit manic, but she was a nice girl. She had a rough home life, so I don't hold it against her. Come to find out, she had just had a large fight with her mother, which ended with her getting kicked out. So she is effectively homeless. Good reason to be upset. So I ask her if she needs a night off, and she says, nah, she needs the money. I can't disagree and head off to get started. For the night shift, the night manager typically runs the drive-thru register after day shift leaves. There's a few reasons for this. First off, this means that the manager has control of the drawer and the money for the entire night. This eliminates the possibility of employees having short drawers. Second, this also puts the manager as the person interacting with the customers. I lived in a college town, so drunken guys drive through all the time and just want to chat up the pretty face behind the register. Third, it gives the manager the least amount of responsibilities as far as cleanup. So, given what I know now, I make up a position chart and place Karen on the register and Jen on a fryer where she can get help if she can't focus. I walked to the office to hand off the chart to the night manager, and I was surprised that he wasn't there. He normally is in at least an hour before shift just to make sure that everything is ready. That's when I remembered this will be Karen's first night alone. I groaned inwardly. Oh, this is going to be a trial by fire kind of night. The day manager's there, but no sign of Karen. It's now 10 minutes to shift, and even the day manager is wondering what's up. I fill the day manager in about Jen, I show her the chart, and I ask if it looks good. She agrees, and I said that I'll post it for now, and Karen can sign it when she gets in. I had just finished posting the position chart when Karen shows up looking frazzled. She heads for the office without a word to anyone. Meanwhile, people start getting into position and ready for the shift. A few minutes later, Karen walks up, pulls my position chart, and replaces it with a new one. Again, she walks off without a word. According to the new position chart, Jen is working the drive-thru and Karen is working nothing. Her name isn't there. She has another employee working 2 positions and the whole shift working effectively 1 person short. What in the world? So I head over to the office where Karen and the day manager are talking, and I ask for some clarification. I explain that there must be a mistake. Karen says, No, that's right. So I reply, yeah, but you're not in a position and that worker is working 2 positions. Well, how am I supposed to be in charge if I'm in a position? Day shift and I just stare at her blankly. Day shift lead says, Karen, you need to be in a position. You are accounted for in the labor calculations. Well, I have 6 years of management experience, and I have never needed to fill a position to get the job done. Things are going to change around here now. We do things my way now. Now, she just spent the last 2 weeks shadowing a manager that walked her through every step of the job, and she knows that she should be in a position and why. This shouldn't even be a question. She just wants to spend the shift sitting in the office, and everyone knows it. At this point, day shift manager and I are sharing horrified glances at each other. So I tell Karen that she'll need to go get people moved around if that's what she wants, because it's her plan. She gives an exasperated sigh and heads that way. I turn to day shift and I just plead with her to call the store manager and let her know what's going on, and she agrees. I head back to the line and start working. After a short time later, day shift pulls me aside and says that the store manager said that it is Karen's shift, that she is in charge. She makes the decisions, and then she leaves for the night. The shift proceeds to implode in a spectacular fashion. Less than an hour in, the employee working 2 positions is so far in the weeds that orders are taking 3 times as long to get out. The drive-thru is backed up, and the guys stuck at the window waiting are trying to flirt with Jen, who's having none of it and getting more annoyed by the minute. As the wait gets longer and longer, the people are becoming more and more irritated as they get to the window and they're just taking it out on Jen. Things are starting to get out of hand. Karen is nowhere to be seen. I go to the office to let her know, hey, we need some help out here, and I just find her watching a portable TV. I start to tell her what's going on, and she just cuts me off. She tells me to get back on the line, do my job, and stop bothering her. I was about to try and explain when I just thought, you know what? Screw that. Cue malicious compliance. I turned, walked back to the line, and I watched the situation unfold. 30 minutes later, a car at the window is giving Jen an earful about how long that she's been waiting. She calls her worthless, and Jen goes off. She takes the large strawberry milkshake next to her, chucks it at the lady, and calls her a fat, ugly censored. The lady and the inside of her car are covered in pink goo. Everything went so silent that you could hear a pin drop. Then the lady starts screaming. Jen closes the window on her and walks calmly to the back. The lady peels around the front and comes in the front door screaming for a manager. I go and I knock on the office door, and then Karen appears, looking ticked and annoyed. She tries to snap at me, but I tell her she has a customer at the front asking for the manager. Karen rolls her eyes and heads toward the front, oblivious to the crap storm that is waiting. I went and I found Jen huddled in the back, crying again. I tell her to get herself together and head back to the front when she's ready. I head to the line where the now purple-faced lady is screaming at Karen about dry cleaning and upholstery cleaning, and I want that girl fired. At this point, I can see that Karen has finally realized that things have gotten way out of control. She is trying to calm the lady down, but she is having none of it. Eventually, Jen comes back to the line and the lady starts in on her again, calling her all kinds of nasty things. Karen just stood there and let the woman berate her. Jen just kinda deflated in front of us. Watching her crumble like that just broke something in me. I walked over to Jen and said, "You know what? Just quit. You're better than this job, and you can do better." She looked up at me for a moment and then smiled. She lifted her chin, walked to Karen and said, "I quit," handed her name tag to her, and walked out. Karen started apologizing to the lady, who now seemed slightly mollified. Then Karen started bad-mouthing Jen to her, saying how she was a terrible employee and how we were all happy that she was gone. That's when I decided that I was better than that job too. I looked at Karen and I said, "The only terrible employee here is you," and I walked out. 2 other employees walked out right behind me. We all met with Jen in the parking lot and went to an IHOP where we sat and speculated on how Karen was getting along. Jen told me that that was the first time in her life that anyone had ever stood up for her. The next day, I got a call from the store manager asking for an explanation. Apparently, Karen had struggled the entire night with service. Afterwards, she'd been there most of the night trying to clean and prep for the day shift and had done a really crappy poor job. The story that she'd given the store manager was that Jen and I had planned everything with the intent to set her up because we didn't like her and wanted just to see her fail. Karen had basically blamed the whole incident on Jen and I. The store manager told me that she was investigating to get all sides of the story, so I told her. A few hours later, she called again and informed me that Karen was no longer employed and asked that if I would be coming in that night. I asked if Jen was getting her job back, and she said no. The whole shake debacle wasn't something she could overlook. I said, well then, my answer is no. She was surprised. She tried to negotiate with me, and I told her that my price was Jen getting her job back. She said she couldn't do that, and that was that. If you're wondering how Jen turned out, I married her. We're very happy and have 4 children. OP showed the story to Jen and thought that she might cry, but she didn't. She said it was one of her darkest days, but ended up being one of the best of her life. What do you think? What would have you done? Karen steals and destroys my car, but the cops arrest me. Click the video on your screen to find if Karen gets justice served to her, and I'll see you there.